Doctor Who fans love a bit of expanded canon. Gives us a nice, tingly feeling. The more fan service-y, the better.
Oh, baby, I'm beating out a samba.
And over the last few months, while we've all been in lockdown due to the coronavirus, we've all been getting a bit of a weekly dollop of it, thanks to Emily Cook, some marvellous writers, and a whole bunch of actors and creatives, all willing to give their time for free and raise some money for a good cause along the way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to the weekly watch-alongs organised by Emily and the added additional material released on a specially created YouTube channel to go along with them. Not all of this added material was in-universe stories, of course. We got online choirs singing songs, messages from cast, showcases of fan-made artwork, and some nice new trailers as well. But that in-universe stuff, in the form of short stories, monologues, comic strips, and short scenes, is what really got our hearts racing as fans. And we learnt a lot of new stuff about some of our favourite characters in them. So in today's video, I'm going to go through them one by one and explore what we learnt in the expanded canon of Doctor Who Lockdown. The first extra story we retreated to was an extra chapter to the novelisation of Rose, written by Russell T Davies himself to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the episode. The chapter was read by Jacob Dudman. In it, we learn a sliver of the Nestene consciousness survived the anti-plastic formula the Doctor and Rose had just defeated it with. We also learn that the explosion we saw in the TV episode was, well, a bit bigger than we first thought and resulted in the London Eye collapsing into the Thames, with people still in the pods of the giant Ferris wheel. Oh yeah, and the resulting wave of water also caused some damage to Westminster Abbey, and overall there was some loss of life. Whoops. The sliver of Nestene consciousness then turns itself into a living statue. You know, one of those people that stands on corners of big cities and doesn't move until you put some money in. Then it drags itself in the direction it can feel the largest thirst for power, the Houses of Parliament, where it finds a blonde man dead on the floor, and sensing his thirst for power that this man had, it creates a final autumn in his image. It's Boris Johnson. On the way there, it had a thought about forming an alliance with the Doctor's other enemies to seek revenge. The origins of the alliance we see at the end of Series 5, perhaps. We also learn a bit about the Nestene's home planet, Nestenia. We're told that the 17 planets of the plastic conjunction have been at peace after eons of war, implying other plastic-based creatures beyond the Nestene. We also find out how they were devastated by the Time War. In a matter of seconds, hundreds of planets appeared and fell from the sky, all copies of Skaro, Gallifrey and Earth, and then disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. But the impact of their presence was big. The Raggedy Doctor for the 11th Hour tweet-along was written by Stephen Moffat and narrated by Caitlin Blackwood. It's little Amelia's diary entry from after she had first met the Doctor. It talks about telling Mel's and Rory about him. We don't get a whole lot of new information in it, it's just a sweet story. Oh, and has some wonderful illustrations by Sophie Isles as well, so well worth checking out. Rory's story picks up 8 years from their perspective, after him and Amy were zapped to the past by the Weeping Angels. It's a short film that is Rory recording a bit of his autobiography on the only working smartphone in the world. He's recording it for his son. So, what do we learn? Well, it's now 1946 and the two have settled down, with Amy now established as a writer under the name Amelia. They're decorating a room ready for the arrival of their son Anthony. It's implied that they're adopting him, although it's never explicitly said. Arthur Darvill reprised his role here in live action, and Karen Gillan contributes a voice line at the end. If you'd only heard of one of these, it was probably Farewell, Sarah Jane, written by Russell T Davies. This short story, written by Russell T Davies and narrated again by Jacob Dudman, with other guest appearances, is on the main Doctor Who channel as opposed to the special Lockdown channel. In it, we find ourselves at a service for Sarah Jane, seemingly her funeral, attended by friends of Sarah and the Doctor, many of which we find out new things about. For instance, we learn that Tiga and Nissa are now a couple and living in Australia. Ben and Polly are seemingly a couple too and live in India. Ian and Barbara are there, having travelled from Cambridge. Martha and Mickey now have a son called August. Jo Jones, formerly Grant, has a granddaughter named Rio de Janeiro, although we might have already known that. Ace talks about having an adventure with Sarah Jane involving the Diamond Wolf clan. Luke is working for UNIT, seemingly as a scientist. He has equations to solve. He's been married for 5 years to Sanjay, who Sarah Jane had encouraged him to talk to. We're told Clive is attending New York Comic Con as the guest of honour, and there was reference to his Silver Bullet movie, so we can maybe assume he's either an actor or director. Rani is working as a journalist and has just been to the North Pole reporting on something called Project Refreeze. We also find out that Luke, Clive and Rani meet up every Christmas, so that's nice. Good to keep in contact with old friends. Also in attendance are some unit soldiers who are with Kate Stewart, Dodo, who is decidedly not dead despite events in the Virgin New Adventures novel Who Killed Kennedy, a Dr. Holloway, presumably Grace, Liz Shaw, Victoria, Skye, who was a regular in the final season of Sarah Jane Adventures, the one season I haven't seen, Captain Jack Harkness, and Maria and her dad, albeit over a video link as they missed their flight. An old Sarah Jane villain raised its head as well, because the Trickster turned up to cause havoc. It's okay though, because of course all the guests joined forces to defeat him and trap him at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for 1,000 years. Rani mentions she likes to think Sarah Jane isn't dead, but that the Doctor probably picked her up and she's flying around the universe. Sadly, this is just her wishful thinking, and there's nothing to actually substantiate that within the story itself. Shadow of a Doubt for the Human Nature / Family of Blood watch-along, written by Paul Cornell. We actually get two stories to tie into the watch-along for Human Nature and the Family of Blood, both written by the episode scribe Paul Cornell. The first is Shadow of a Doubt, in which Bernice Summerfield narrates her experience of finding a mirror with the girl and the balloon trapped inside, similar but different to a girl who had once haunted her. In this, the story actually references the fact that there are two versions of Human Nature, the original book version featuring the 7th Doctor and Benny, and the TV version featuring the 10th Doctor and Martha, and informs us that they both happened, albeit in some undisclosed timey-wimey way. This both happened and didn't happen. The girl seems to know about the other her. We don't get any clear answers on how it all works, but it's a nice little nod to the fact that both stories exist. We find out the Doctor has visited, in many incarnations, her every month, including the one with all the hair, maybe a latter 12th Doctor, the one Benny had travelled with, the 7th, and some we are not familiar with, such as the thin white aristocrat, the one who couldn't walk, which is possibly the wheelchair-bound future incarnation the Doctor referenced in Russell T Davies's novelisation of Rose, and the one with the red hair, finally.
Am I Ginger?
Who thought he was the last? The Doctor always asked if she was sorry, and she always said no. Eventually, Benny just returns the mirror to the ruins where she found it. This is of course performed brilliantly by long-term Benny actress Lisa Bowerman. The second tie-in is a short story from the first-person perspective of the creepy girl with the balloons trapped in the mirror. We find out she had the ability to travel between mirrors and look out at the world, and she re-emphasises that various incarnations of the Doctor have visited her. Eventually though, the 13th Doctor turns up and decides to change her own future because incarnations past her have already visited the girl and smashed the mirror to release her. She takes her back to the girl's own planet where she will soon come to the end of her natural life. Sven and the Scarf is a short written by Andre Ireland to tie into the watch-along for Dalek, in which we hear the recorded notes of Sven, and Mitchell's predecessor as alien researcher at Geocomtex. Sven performs an investigation into a scarf that holds the remnants of the 4th Doctor's adventures. As he finishes his report, he mentions a new item that has come in, the Dalek. Nothing really is learnt new from this other than the probably existence of Sven and the fact that somehow Van Statten has gotten hold of the 4th Doctor's scarf. Pompadour was written by Stephen Moffat for the Girl in the Fireplace tweet-along. In this monologue, from Madame Pompadour's perspective, we learn that her personality lives on in the computer of the ship in the future, as the clockwork droids had made scans of her brain. This personality, though, is confused and thinks it is the real Madame Pompadour, and not knowing what is going on, it wonders where the Doctor is and feels very lonely. The Zygon Isolation was written by Peter Harness and is a short film starring Ingrid Oliver as both Osgoods, having a video call with each other during lockdown. So, I guess we learn in this that one didn't die as we'd previously believed. Also, they know about the 13th Doctor, and it's implied that she is somehow watching in as she texts them during it. I think someone needs to have a chat with 13 about appropriate behaviour and invasion of privacy there. The Descendants of Pompeii, written by James Moran, is a short film, again video chat based, with, we are led to believe, 2 descendants of the family in Fires of Pompeii, played by the same actors who played the mother and daughter in that family. It's hinted that the Doctor has been keeping an eye on the family over the generations. Shame the Doctor didn't keep an eye on the other strand of that family that Frobisher and Torchwood is apparently a part of too. In Fear is a Superpower, we actually get a comic strip written by James Peaty and illustrated by Mike Collins. It's basically a recap of Danny Pink's life from being a child in an orphanage to becoming a Cyberman. We don't get a whole lot of concrete added facts from this one, but we do get a bit more about his psyche and the development of his personality over his formative years. Doctors assemble. We get a multi-doctor extravaganza in this visualised audio drama, with each of the doctors played by impersonators. We find the fourth Doctor is trapped in the TARDIS as it collapses and becomes smaller on the inside, so he uses the TARDIS telepathic circuits to send a distress signal to his other selves. All the Doctors, from the 1st to the 13th, are called, but 6 doesn't answer. And the 1st just thinks his equipment's malfunctioning and doesn't contribute. We find out that the 4th Doctor found out the Earth is in grave danger from Sarah Jane, but there are no concrete hints as to where in her timeline she sent that message from. After a telepathic conference between all the Doctors, turns out it was mostly solved by the 6th Doctor already. We already know from the lore of the show that sometimes past Doctors don't retain their memories of multi-Doctor meetings, but the 13th, being the furthest along in the timeline, probably should, so she's walking around having known she's met all of these other Doctors. The Secret of Novice Hame, written by Russell T Davies. The titular cat creature we know from the episodes New Earth and Gridlock is on her deathbed. We learn a bit about her history in the story. Born in a refugee camp during the Mechanical Wars, which swept across the western arm of the Spiral Conflagration, her parents sold her to the Sisters of Plenitude for 10 shillings, just enough to get them and Hame's siblings' passage out of there, leaving her behind. The sisters took her to New Earth and inducted her at 13. The story mentions several other animal-based races: hippo guards, dog kind, sparrow forms, swans and flamingos, dolphin children, lion kind, heron folk, mice kind, and the last suffering owl woman. It also appears that Novice Hame believes in an afterlife called the Cat Kingdom. The 10th Doctor visits her during his goodbye tour that we previously saw a glimpse of in the End of Time Part 2. He also tracked down her parents to send to her to say goodbye. We also in the story get a hint of a mysterious secret of New Earth's existence, something that explains why it's the same diameter and orbit as original Earth that she found beneath the surface of the planet, and she tries to tell the Doctor about this, but we do not get to hear the rest of the secret, because she realises that she has already started to slip away and isn't actually talking to him, just thinking in her head. A mystery for another story, perhaps. Finally, in The Best of Days, written by Stephen Moffat and starring Pearl Mackie and Matt Lucas, we hear a series of messages sent between the two after the events of the Doctor Falls. In these messages, we learn that Nardole continues to ward off the Cybermen and the colony ship on the edge of the black hole. Bill and Heather have broken up and Bill has returned to Earth and to St. Luke's University. She also has her eye on a new girl, and references masks, hinting that this is during the 2020 pandemic. She also says that she's been on a march, which we can assume is one of the Black Lives Matter marches. They mention that neither has heard from the Doctor, indicating that she didn't presume he had died, like we thought. And with that, the lockdown watch-alongs organised by Emily Cook ended. I think we can all agree she did an amazing job to get all the people involved that she did. I'll leave links to each of the videos in the description below, and I recommend checking them out if you haven't already. Which of these expanded canon stories was your favourite? Let me know, and why, in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate it if you would hit that like button, share it around, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll be back with more Doctor Who videos soon, so until then, be seeing you.